Who is the best starting quarterback in the NFL? Today, I'll be ranking every single starting quarterback from 32 to 1 for the 2022 NFL season. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL content. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. Right before I begin, I just want to show you guys my criteria for this list, just so you guys can gauge a better sense of how I'm ranking these QBs and what I'm valuing. So my criteria for this is your production over your last 17 games, so your last full season of statistical production. That is what the volume stats you will see on the statistical graphics shown as. And then your ability to win a championship in 2022. So if I have an average team and I put a quarterback, and I put this quarterback, say just for example, Kirk Cousins, where does Kirk Cousins rank among the NFL in terms of ability to lead a team to a championship in 2022? That is my criteria. And now finally, let's get into actually ranking these guys. At number 32, the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, according to me, is Drew Lock. Now, Drew Lock is not the least talented starting quarterback in the NFL, especially from an arm strength perspective. Drew Lock has a ton of arm talent. I even think Drew Lock's a little underrated in his mobility. I think he can move around a little bit more than people think. And Drew Lock, from just a physically perspective, with the ability downfield as a passer, and just overall his arm strength, again, it's one of the best in football, period, point blank. It is right in the, I would say, bordering, if not in the top 10 strongest arms in the league. Why Drew Lock is the lowest ranked starting quarterback on my list is simple. He does not feel the game like a quarterback. He does not read the game like a quarterback. When he's forced to read and react to defenses, he's really poor. Now, I think Drew Lock, when he's just forced to make a throw, is actually a little bit underrated. But when he has time to think, that's when he struggles. And that's not a good thing, because it means he isn't able to process or read defenses very well. He's just not a very intelligent quarterback or passer. And his accuracy in the short, intermediate ranges of the field are also not proficient. And for that, when I'm trying to win a championship, if I have someone that lackluster in so many major areas of the game, I don't want you. You can't win a championship that way. And so for as talented as Drew Lock is up here, he is not talented here enough for me to rank him over any starting quarterback in the league. So at number 32, I have Drew Lock. At number 31, I have the new starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, Marcus Mariota, back reunited with Arthur Smith. And Mariota, I think, again, as a talent, he's certainly a starting caliber talent. What he can offer with his legs are, in my opinion, a pretty good rushing quarterback. I think he can be a pretty good mobile quarterback, and he's shown he can be a mobile quarterback in the past. Now, I think one of the problems with Mariota in Tennessee was he didn't use those legs enough. I thought at times he should have used his legs more, he should have ran more, and he should have overall probably had more designed runs in Tennessee just to utilize what I believe to be his greatest strength. I don't think he's got a huge arm, but I think he's got a capable one. My problem with him, though, is I just don't think, again, just like Drew Lock, he's not a very intelligent quarterback. Now, I think as a leader, he is actually a little underrated. I think his Tennessee teammates kind of fed off of him a bit, and they seem to, they won at a fairly high rate with him. They made the playoffs one of those seasons. We were very close the next year. But from an accuracy perspective, from an intelligence perspective, I do think he certainly can be improved upon. And I think with Arthur Smith, that this system has the potential to get the best out of him. But with Mariota, again, what holds him back for me, we haven't seen him in a while. He was backing up Derek Carr in Vegas, and in the very limited, action that we did see of him as a rusher, he actually looked quite competent. So I don't think Mariota is necessarily the worst quarterback from a talent perspective, but between lack of provenness, I guess, over the last few years and the limit to him as a passer, I have him right at number 31. At number 30, I have the Carolina Panthers starting quarterback, Sam Darnold. Now, the narrative entering last season was, hey, Sam Darnold wasn't very good with the Jets, but that was only because he had Adam Gase and he had a terrible team around him. He'll be much better with Carolina this year. And, well, for the first 3 weeks or so, it looks like that might actually be happening. But we got further and further into the season. Sam Darnold faced more and more defenses, and Sam Darnold turned into a pumpkin. Eventually, Carolina had to sign Cam Newton. I think they played P.J. Walker. It was a mess last season for the Carolina Panther quarterback spot, and Sam Darnold totally contributed to that. Sam Darnold, simply put, is not a smart quarterback. He just is not. When it comes to decision making, he tries, I think, too much to almost he throws the ball into places it just should not be thrown into, to put it simply. Now, I think Sam Darnold is solid when it comes to taking the quick throws, taking the quick reads. He's decent at that. But when it comes to downfield passing, when it comes to throwing the ball into tight windows, throwing the ball into tightly covered outside the number plays, it just doesn't work for Sam Darnold. And he seems to be a bit injury prone. He seems to not always be the most durable player. And ultimately, as a rusher, I do think he has a little bit to offer, but it isn't to the point where it's like a Lamar Jackson or a Kyler Murray to where it offsets being completely limited as a passer and a thrower. It's too much touch with him too. There's not enough power on his throws, and there never really has been enough power on his throws to make him a very good passer of the football. So Sam Darnold has some qualities to him, but between decision making and overemphasis on touch and lack of emphasis on power that may not even be there, he falls to me at number 30. At number 29, I have the new Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, not Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky, I think, has always been a touch underrated. I've never been his biggest hater. I've actually kind of been closer to one of his larger defenders, and I do think he has become underrated. I think from what we saw from him in limited action in the preseason last year in Buffalo was a more decisive, quicker release, more accurate quarterback that was able to smartly use his underrated, undersold physical traits. Mitch Trubisky's always been good when it comes to escaping pressure. Mitch Trubisky's always been a good scrambler. I'm not saying he's Kyler Murray, but he's always been good at that. But Mitch Trubisky's problem was his accuracy, mostly, and he never had a cannon for an arm. He had a whatever arm, league average. But he seems like his accuracy, after learning under Josh Allen and being coached with and by Brian Daboll, has really improved, just from what I've seen from him. And I don't think his last year with Chicago was necessarily a terrible one statistically. I think with what he was dealt with in Chicago, it was not a ton there offensively to support him. We know now Matt Nagy was not a very good offensive coordinator or head coach. We know that the receiving core there, they had some players, but it was nothing special. The offensive line was nothing special. There was not a ton there to support him, and he still put up decent statistics, and he's won a fair amount of games. His overall career resume is not horrible. It is not embarrassing. Now, I still need to see him actually prove he can be a good NFL quarterback, which is why he's at 29, because I just have not seen much from him. But he has all the tools, physically, mentally, and now with the team with the Steelers, to be much higher on this list next year. So a positive number 29 I have as Mitchell Trubisky. At number 28, I have Davis Mills of the Houston Texans, I have to say, I think Davis Mills played more consistent football than Justin Fields did, than Zach Wilson did, than Trevor Lawrence did last season. I do. I think Davis Mills played more consistent. Not necessarily at his best or better than those guys, but I think he played more consistent football than those three did. Here's my problem with Davis Mills, though, and I think a lot of people are overrating him based on last season. When you look back at last season, really, we look back at it positively because Davis Mills was not a first-round pick last season. Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and Zach Wilson were all drafted very high. So we look back at their production as disappointing, whereas we look at Davis Mills as uplifting and inspiring and admirable, especially considering most people thought Houston would be the worst team in the league entering last season. So that kind of skews it to make him look better than he was. Now, I do think Davis Mills is a fairly smart quarterback for his age. I think he's good at going through his progressions. I think he's good at going through the proper reads. I think he has a fair amount of accuracy that can be something to be improved upon, but can be a building block. I don't think he has anything close to a special arm. I think he struggles downfield as a passer. I don't think he has much mobility. I think he has great size, and size is a skill in some ways, but it doesn't necessarily make him a great quarterback when it comes to seeing the field. I do think he at times, is not the most accurate outside of the numbers. So it's interesting. Davis Mills is a flawed quarterback for sure, and that's why he's number 28. And I do think we are overrating how great he was last season. But it's admirable that somebody that was not taken in the first round is here at number 28 on my starting quarterbacks list. So at number 28, I have Davis Mills. At number 27, I have a former Super Bowl quarterback, someone that has played in the Super Bowl, Jared Goff. Yes, it was just 3 seasons ago or so that Jared Goff was a Super Bowl quarterback. He was playing in the Super Bowl, and now he is in no man's land on the Detroit Lions. What a fall from grace for Jared Goff. Well, I think if you really paid attention to him, you would know Jared Goff was never a great quarterback. He was far from it in LA, and now with the Lions, he kind of got exposed last year. Now, I don't think Jared Goff's a terrible quarterback by any means. I think Jared Goff has some skills that are decent. I think he's always been fairly accurate as a passer. I think he's always had a fairly underrated arm. I think as a rusher, he's actually also been a bit underrated. He will evade pressure. He will escape sacks. He will at times even extend plays, and he will run for first downs. And he's big enough to quarterback sneak. But Jared Goff, the problem with him is just the lack of aggressiveness. Use that arm some more, man. Like, you have the arm power to power the football downfield, and you just don't do it ever. And his decision making is not necessarily great by any means. His leadership off the field, I don't think it's great. I don't think it's horrible, but it's not something to write home about. And I just don't think he provides you with much of a ceiling. I think Jared Goff is a quarterback that you use to evaluate your team. You use to evaluate specifically your wide receiver room. Do you have a player here? Do you have a player there? Because he's been in a system with Sean McVay and are surrounded by a good team around him that he's shown he can be, at least statistically, an effective passer. But when he's surrounded by poor players, he's going to look poor. He is, by definition, somebody that is reflective of the team around him. And so because of that, I have Jared Goff at number 27. At number 26, I have Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones fell quite a bit for me. And why was this? Because I am seeing some hype from Giants fans and from just overall the NFL media about Daniel Jones this year. Daniel Jones, his ability to make big plays was always something I circled back to in the last couple of years as to defend him from the narrative that he's a completely terrible quarterback. And I don't think he's a completely terrible quarterback still. But the big plays, where were they last year, man? They were just not there. He had one of the lowest big-time throw rates in the league. And his ability to take care of the football is something that I do think improved last year. We know everything about the fumbles. That wasn't as big of a thing last season. But he just was way more conservative last season for whatever reason, and it was really concerning to me. He still also struggles with simple things like screen passes. There was a point last season where screen passes were a major thing for him. Now, I think Daniel Jones as a talent is a pretty good quarterback. He's fairly accurate. He has a fairly strong arm. I don't think it's a great arm, but it's fairly strong. He has always been able to move around and extend plays fairly well. And I think his mind has improved at the NFL level, and it was always one of his stronger suits. And with the improved fumbles, I can totally see Daniel Jones with Brian Daboll being a solid quarterback. But the regression I thought he took I thought last season was his worst season as a pro, which 3 years in is not a very good sign. So right at number 26, I have Daniel Jones. At number 25, I have the number 1 pick from just a year ago, Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence was hyped up as a generational talent entering last season, and he did not show that at all. He was quite possibly the worst rookie quarterback to play significant snaps. I would have said Mac Jones, Davis Mills, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson were all better and more consistent than Trevor Lawrence was last season. I still see a lot of physical potential from Lawrence last season. I still think he has a really strong arm. I still think he has really underrated mobility. I still think he has great size. And that's something that I think he can really improve upon, is seeing the field. I think Lawrence, with his size, should be able to see the field better than he does, and that by nature should improve him as a pocket passer. I'm also not going to pretend like Lawrence was exactly playing with a great team last year, because let's be honest, the team stunk last year, and Urban Meyer was the joke of the year. But still, for a generational talent, you would have expected more. And I'm not going to completely, I'm not completely giving up on him just yet, because the jersey I'm wearing currently, Peyton Manning, also had a pretty brutal rookie year record-wise and just overall from his play. But there are more flaws in Trevor Lawrence's game than people would have wanted you to realize entering last year's draft. He does not think the game very well. He probably thinks the game as one of the worst in the league. From an accuracy perspective, specifically in the short, intermediate ranges of the field, from a touch perspective as well, I don't think he puts quite enough touch on some of his passes. It's a little bit of the opposite of Sam Darnold, but his physical traits are higher than what Darnold does well. So at number 25, I have Trevor Lawrence. At number 24, I have Zach Wilson. Now, I have to say, I was very critical of Zach Wilson early in the season because I thought he was straight up playing horribly. But by the end of the season last season, he may very well have been the best rookie quarterback in the class. And I also think if Zach Wilson were to double his ranking, as in he were to go from 24th on my list to 12 by the time I'm doing this next year, I would not be stunned. I would not. I saw that much at the end of the season. I saw improvement in mechanics. I saw improvements in accuracy. I saw improvements in touch and just overall decision-making from him. I saw better utilization, more consistent utilization of his physical tools. I saw just overall his physical tools flash as much as anybody in the class, bar maybe Trevor Lawrence. He's big. He can take hits. He's, I think, a little underrated from a mobility perspective. And he has a real powerful arm. It reminds me of a young Matthew Stafford's arm from the way he's able to power the football and throw into some tight windows. The Jets receiving corps was not very good last year, and he was still able to fit the ball on the money into some really tough covered places. It was really impressive. I don't think he has consistent enough accuracy yet, and I don't know if his mental game is quite up to the level of a Justin Fields or a Davis Mills or certainly a Mac Jones, but I certainly think Zach Wilson is getting better, did get better, and will continue to get better. So at number 24, I have Zach Wilson. At number 23, I have Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. I think Justin Fields was pretty impressive last season as a rookie. Now, there are certainly things he can improve upon. I think his decision-making can certainly be improved upon. I think at times he tries to be Superman too much, and he tries to save games, and he just doesn't make the correct decisions at times, especially at times it was late in games. He needs to know that he's not the most athletically gifted player on every field like he was in college, and, he is going to get caught by fast defenders when he's trying to scramble. But from his ability to extend plays, from his ability to evade pressure, from his ability to, I think, he put touch on the football. I did not think he could. His mechanics were really concerning coming into last season, but I thought he made a ton of high-level throws into tight windows last year. And I was really impressed with how he was able to do it. I also thought his ability to, at times, operate an offense. I remember they played the Green Bay Packers late in the season. I thought his ability to, sit there and operate an offense and at times just take the quick throws and the quick reads and the smart plays impressed me. And when he's playing within a system, Justin Fields was really dangerous because he can hit you with efficiency and explosiveness when he's on. Now, he's not always on, and he was fairly inconsistent last season. But when he was on, he was as good as any quarterback in the class last season. He doesn't exactly have much to work with either, or didn't. It still doesn't really. The receivers there were nothing special. The offensive line was below average. Matt Nagy was nothing special. I think Justin Fields is a legit player moving forward, and I have him currently at number 23. At number 22, I have Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts has a lot of elite, honestly. I think his mobility is as good as anybody in the league, bar Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray. I do. I think as a runner, he gets the best out of a rushing offense. He adds a level of elusiveness and speed to a power run game that makes it, and it made the Eagles one of the best in football. I also think he has a really strong, good, powerful arm. His ability to put power on some of his throws is impressive. He can throw the deep ball fairly well. He's a fairly accurate deep passer. Where Jalen Hurts gets in trouble is up here and in the short intermediate game and putting touch on the football. But I think Jalen Hurts can improve on that with more experience and more time to read defenses. A lot of the time in college, because he had Lincoln Riley's last year, it was kind of served to him on a platter easily, and he didn't really have to think much. It was the scheme, the RPO mesh concepts doing the work for him. Whereas with the Eagles now, he has to do that. He has to work at the line of scrimmage, and it clearly doesn't suit him. And that's where I think he gets lost. More than anything is that decision making. But now with A.J. Brown coming, another year with Devontae Smith, and just overall another year in the league, I expect Jalen Hurts to be better as a decision maker, and I think he will be a better passer. I don't think this guy is completely incompetent as a passer. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's good, and I think he has a problem when the Eagles get behind in games where he can't get them back in. But I think he'll be better. I think he's already a little underrated when it comes to his arm. And at number 22, I have Jalen Hurts. At number 21, I have Tua Tagovaloa of the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovaloa does a lot well, and I don't think it's talked about enough. I think too many people are just like, oh, Tua sucks. I don't think it's nearly that simple. I think Tua Tagovaloa is legitimately a smart player. I think he's a smart quarterback. I think his ability to operate within a system and within an offense and take what the defense gives him, make checks at the line, and overall just operate an offense to the point that he maximizes its success at what it's good at is admirable. I think he's good with getting guys into positions to where they can make yards after catch plays. I think he's an accurate passer, one of the more accurate passers in the league. I don't think it's elite, but I don't think it's far from bad. It's a strength of his. And I think he really improved with touch last year too. He puts a good amount of touch on his deep ball to where now it's, he doesn't have much power on his arm, and that's why that's one of the reasons he's not in my top. He's not higher on my list. But he has enough touch now where his deep ball is at least starting caliber. I don't think he has a very strong arm, and I don't think he's very good under pressure, and I think at times he looks small and short in the pocket. And that is just what he is, because he just is not very big or tall. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how it is, and that hurts him more than it does guys higher on my list. But Tua does a lot well. I think he improved from 2020 to 2021. My only other problem with him is durability. But I think as a leader too, he's a bit undervalued. This guy has been constantly questioned and ridiculed throughout his career so far, and he's not said anything wrong. He's not done anything wrong. He's overall been mostly a model citizen. So yeah, I had number 21, I have Tua Tagovaloa. At number 20, I have Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston impressed me and unimpressed me in a lot of ways last season when he was healthy. Jameis Winston improved as a pocket passer, and he improves up here, and he improved his accuracy. He improved, or at least he showed within a Sean Payton, Pete Carmichael, West Coast / Eric Coryell offense, that he can be a competent pocket passer, which at times in Tampa Bay, he would just throw it up there like that and just no tomorrow. No risk it, no biscuit. There was a lot less of that last season, almost to a fault. And Mitch covered this, actually, the Bottom Line View. Go check out his quarterback rankings. That he did not show much aggressiveness at all, and he really didn't. But I still think he has that in him. And the reason I have him a spot above Tua is I just think he has more physical ability. But he did not show much aggressiveness, and I'm wondering if his physical tools are starting to diminish. But as a pocket passer, I thought he looked fairly accurate last season. I thought he made good decisions. I thought he made good reads. I thought he took what the defense gave him at a much better clip. I still think, his mechanics can be a little weird at times, and I'm not big on his leadership, but I'll give him credit. I do think he's improved as an overall pocket passer and from an accuracy and mind perspective, even if I do think he's falling off a little bit physically. So we'll see what Jameis does this year. He's got more weapons this year. He did not have many weapons last season with no Michael Thomas. It was really just him and Alvin Kamara. But we'll see. There is no Sean Payton as well, so that's another factor to consider. But at number 20, I have Jameis Winston. At number 19, I have Jimmy Garoppolo, who I believe will be the 49ers starting quarterback come week 1. Jimmy Garoppolo does a lot well, more than I think people give him credit for. First of all, unlike a guy like Tua, he does not look small in the pocket, at least relative. He's an accurate player, I would say. He's a fairly solid decision maker. He's decent against the blitz. He's good at navigating and finding throwing lanes. He has a really quick, good release. And I think he's a good leader for just motivating his football team. The team seems to play well for him, and I don't think that it's some anomaly that Kyle Shanahan's record with him is so good, but his record with every other quarterback he's had with the 49ers is so abysmal. I do think he is a solid quarterback, and he has gone to the Super Bowl, nearly won it. He has gone to an NFC championship, nearly won it. He has won games against the likes of Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. And he seems, again, like a great guy. But I don't think he is I won't say good. He's a solid quarterback. I won't say he's a very good quarterback. He does not think the game quite like a great quarterback. He does not have the arm of a great quarterback. And he, most importantly, is not good under pressure and is not good down the field. When it comes to making throws downfield, the 49ers, almost all of their explosiveness is after the catch. And Jimmy, like Tua, is fairly good at leading his receivers on and just kind of putting them in positions to where they can work after the catch. Guys like Samuel and Kittle. But I feel like almost all of his production is manufactured by the fact that he has such a great offensive coach and he has such great players around him. And it feels like the 49ers, with a guy that would be in the top half of my list, probably win a Super Bowl in the last 3 years. But with Jimmy, they lose leads at times, I think, because he's not aggressive enough. And because he doesn't make enough plays to put the game out of reach against a really good team. And unlike a guy like Matt Ryan that Kyle Shanahan's had that has taken that offense to another level, made them one of the best ever, Jimmy hasn't done that. They've been very good offensively with him, but they haven't been elite, I don't think, ever in a season, even if statistically maybe they were last season. So, and combine that with durability concerns, and that leaves Jimmy off the top half of my list, but still certainly a quality quarterback. So at number 19, I have Jimmy Garoppolo. At number 18, I have Carson Wentz, now on the Washington Commanders. Carson Wentz does a lot well, again, like Jimmy G at the quarterback position, but it's different with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has great arm angles. Carson Wentz has a really strong arm. Carson Wentz has great escapability. Carson Wentz is just a very good athlete. Carson Wentz puts a good amount of power on his deep ball. But what Carson Wentz lacks is some of the things Jimmy Garoppolo excels in. Leadership. He's not very durable. He is not especially accurate at times at parts of the field. He does not at times put enough touch on the football. And his decision making especially can be really erratic and inconsistent. And especially with him, there are times within a game and within weeks where he is inconsistent, week to week, game to game, play to play. That is not someone that I feel necessarily confident I can win a championship with. I don't think it's impossible, but I'm not especially confident. And looking back at last season, the weakness of the Indianapolis Colts might have been Carson Wentz. And I don't think Carson Wentz was bad last season, but I think Carson Wentz kind of underachieved given what he had. He had a great run game, a good offensive line. He had a good defense. He had solid weapons, and he was just solid. It wasn't special. Phillip Rivers, statistically, was the more effective and impactful player for the Colts than Carson Wentz was last season. And I just don't expect Carson Wentz really to ever consistently be able to get back on track. He was on a great trajectory from about 2017 to 2019, but that has completely fallen off the last 2 years, and he is now at 18 on my list. At number 17, I have Deshaun Watson. I'll keep this quick, guys. I would take however many games of Deshaun Watson over everybody below him, and I would take however many games of Deshaun Watson. I would not take that over everybody that'll be ranked above him. Outside of that, I have nothing to say. I hope he never plays in the NFL again. You're not going to hear anything out of me. He doesn't deserve it. At number 16, I have Mac Jones of the New England Patriots. Mac Jones was by far the best rookie quarterback last season. Was not close. He was the most consistent. He was the most productive. He won the most. He was just the best. Mac Jones is really smart. He plays the position like a 8 or 9 year veteran in the NFL rather than someone who is a rookie. From the neck up, Mac Jones is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, period. That's how good he is. From an accuracy perspective, Mac Jones is very good in the short, intermediate, and over the middle kind of plays in that kind of aspect. He's great with in cuts. He's great with slants. He's great, again, in the short passing game. He does tend to not be the best with the deep passing game, but he has enough touch and accuracy, and he has a similar kind of pretty arc on his deep passes that guys like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson have. I see a little bit of that with Mac Jones too, that make his deep passing game above a guy below him. And I think with Mac Jones, his physical tools get a little bit disrespected. I've seen him, kind of step up in the pocket and avoid a sack and just overall evade pressure a little bit better than I think he gets credit for. Now, I'm not saying he's an athletic quarterback, but I think he does it a little bit better than people give him credit for. He seems like a great leader of men and a great guy, and he's proven that when you have a lot of talent around him and a good scheme around him, like he did in his last year at Alabama, he can absolutely light the world on fire. And I really think Mac Jones is going to be the best quarterback of his class. My only thing with Mac Jones is I wonder if he'll be able to succeed as much as a typical second-year quarterback would in what I think potentially could be an interestingly schemed offense this year. But from a pure talent perspective and a production perspective, I think Mac Jones at number 16 is about fair. So number 16, I have Mac Jones. At number 15, I have Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill flirted with the top 10, was in my top 10 last season, but has fallen out for a multitude of reasons. Number one, there's been, I think, better quarterback play recently. And Tannehill really had a down year last season, I felt. I thought Ryan Tannehill did not make as good of the decisions at times last season as he has in years prior. And I understand that the problem was with the receiving room. But Ryan Tannehill still, his decision-making was more erratic. I don't think he quite uses his athleticism enough. And really, I question his decision-making a lot of games last season. I really did. Now, I think Ryan Tannehill has a good mix of efficiency to him and explosiveness to him. And when complemented with a quality run game, as we saw in 2019 and 2020, does a great job of mixing those two. When he gets in rhythm, he can be a very good thrower of the football. He can be a very good passer of the football. But I think the drop back game is where Ryan Tannehill seems to struggle more than most, at least around this level. Mac Jones is probably already a better drop back passer than Ryan Tannehill is. Now, I think Ryan Tannehill has Mac Jones beat when it comes to arm strength, although that last season didn't necessarily translate to being productive as a deep passer. It has worked in that area at times in the last couple years. And I think he is certainly a very good, underrated athlete. He runs for a lot of rushing touchdowns, can run for first downs, and is overall a good rushing quarterback, above average, I would say. But between inconsistent decision-making and just his team doesn't really seem to be able to come from behind with him as the focal point as much, I would say Ryan Tannehill comes in at number 15. I think he's fallen a little bit, and I think he's a little bit threatened right now because of the whole Malik Willis situation. So we'll see if he can rise on this list, if he'll stay at this point, or if he'll fall further. Unfortunately, I kind of feel like it'll be the latter, but we'll see. At number 15, I have Ryan Tannehill. At number 14, I have Matt Ryan, now of the Indianapolis Colts. Matt Ryan is very good. I don't think he's quite elite anymore, and I think he has gradually fallen from that over the last 3 or so years. And I think that really starts with his arm strength. I do think his arm has just kind of fallen off over the last couple years. And I think we kind of see that with his play at the end of seasons. He seems to start seasons fairly well, and then towards the end, it falls off a little bit for him. I also think the thing with Matt Ryan is he just struggles with powering the football into tight windows at this point. But outside of that, Matt Ryan is really good. Matt Ryan is one of the best in football at the line of scrimmage. Outside of Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, I would say Matt Ryan might be the smartest quarterback, just purely on what he's seen in the NFL and deciphering defenses. He might be the best at that. He is underrated mobility-wise. He can run for first downs. He can evade pressure. He can not really extend plays, but he can evade pressure. He can step up in the pocket a little bit like Mac Jones. The nuances of the quarterback position he gets really well, and that's another thing he does, I think, that it goes underrated. He has great pocket footwork. He's always been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. Matt Ryan does a ton well. And one thing I think has improved with him is really ever since that Super Bowl loss, Matt Ryan has kind of taken over as a leader, and he's become one of the better leaders at the quarterback position, whereas earlier in his career he was kind of quiet, but I think recently he's really stepped up and taken that lead and role as a leader of the Atlanta Falcons, and now of the Indianapolis Colts. The other thing is his MVP year, I truly believe, was one of the best statistical quarterback seasons ever, was probably one of the best years ever, but I think since then, without Kyle Shanahan and without a great offensive system around him, Matt Ryan has had to do a lot. And when the Falcons won games last season, it was because of Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, I think, willed his team to wins last season, and that was something I don't think he necessarily did in 2020 or 2019. He willed the Falcons in a couple of those games. The Saints game, the Dolphins game, for example. Those are two of them. And there was a real thing with him. I think he's always also kind of been underrated, in the clutch, just because of that Super Bowl performance, even though he was very good in that game. I think he's always been a little bit better than he gets credit for in big moments, in big situations, in the clutch on last-minute drives. He executed a lot of them last year. I believe he was top 5 in game-winning drives last season. So Matt Ryan now moving to Indianapolis, when it's not all on him, I expect to do well. And I have Matt Ryan right now at number 14. At number 13, I have Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, I feel, is the ultimate system quarterback in the NFL today. And that is not a negative. In fact, that's more of a positive than a negative. Kirk Cousins is an extremely accurate passer. Kirk Cousins can just thread that needle. It's beautiful to watch at times with how accurate he truly is. He can throw the ball in the short ranges, in the intermediate ranges, in the deep passing game. He can thrive at all levels of the field. Why I actually have him above Matt Ryan is even though I think Matt Ryan sometimes makes more game-winning plays than Kirk Cousins does, I think Kirk Cousins is better downfield and has more power to his arm. I think people would be surprised at how powerful some of Kirk Cousins' throws truly are. I also think his mobility is a bit underrated. He almost always, for what it's worth, is up there in the statistics. And look, I mean, I'm not huge on that, but I mean, it's 7 straight years of very good production. I don't think we can just ignore that. I think Kirk Cousins is a very smart quarterback. He's very good both pre and post snap. So Kirk Cousins overall is a very good quarterback. While I don't necessarily consider him maybe an elite quarterback, he has not made some plays to win some games I feel guys in the top 10 would. And I also think with Kirk Cousins, he, for me, sometimes is a little too conservative. Like, I think Kirk Cousins maybe is losing a touch of his fastball at this point, but it's still more than enough for him to be able to throw it 15 yards on 3rd and 12 instead of 4 yards and try to look for the yards after catch like he doesn't really have much of an arm, because I still think he does. But it's just at times where he goes too conservative in big moments. And ultimately, and the goal here is to win a championship, and that inherently makes it harder to win a title when you have a quarterback that is conservative in big moments when they need to be aggressive. But that honestly is really, and again, the clutch stuff, there's merit to it because the statistics fall off. But other than that, Kirk Cousins, I think he does, when you surround him with a good team, he can be a very good quarterback, as we've seen in the past. And again, the statistics are always off the charts. And Kirk Cousins, again, one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league, one of the best pocket quarterbacks in the NFL. So, at number 13, I have Kirk Cousins. At number 12, I have Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray is electric. He is fast. He is quick. And Kyler Murray improved last year as a passer. His accuracy improved. His deep passing improved. I think he has a really strong arm. He's able to pierce that wind really well. And I really think people underestimate just how good he can be as a deep passer. Kyler Murray also under pressure is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Where Kyler Murray struggles is, number one, he's small. So he doesn't necessarily play big in the pocket. But number two, it's when he's kept within the pocket, as we saw last year a couple times with the Rams, when they had an athletic enough front to keep Kyler Murray in the pocket. They really kind of shut down that rushing ability, and then Kyler Murray would have to beat you with his mind, and he couldn't. And that's the big fundamental problem with Kyler Murray. So as great as the accuracy is, as great as the arm is, as great as the rushing ability is, until Kyler Murray improves at reading a defense, improves at processing, and improves at just overall being a pocket passer in the drop back pass game, I don't see him being an elite quarterback. I think he'll be at this very good level that I've had him at for a couple seasons now, but I don't see him being quite at that elite level. So, he still has a ton of room to grow. He's only played in the league 3 years. But I think with his style, he's a little bit susceptible to injuries, which isn't great for a guy his size. And again, I want to see some improvement from him within the pocket as a passer. So at number 12, I have Kyler Murray. At number 11, I have Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I think Dak Prescott was on course for a potential top 5 spot pre-injury. He was playing that well. He was playing the position at an extremely high level. But he got hurt. He came back. He played lackluster, I thought, towards the end of the year. He played even more lackluster in the playoff game, and thus he fell. I still really like Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott is a very good passer. I think he's very accurate. I think he's very smart. I think Dak Prescott is a good player under pressure, and he's fairly good when blitzed, and that's an important thing. I think Dak Prescott has regressed a little bit as a runner. There aren't as many designed runs. There aren't as many just scramble plays. He's still capable there, but it's not what it used to be. And what really scared me with Dak Prescott last season, lack of aggressiveness. Dak Prescott, after he came back, this might have been an injury thing, I don't know. He looked a little scared to really throw the ball downfield, and I can't quite figure out why, because he was having a fair amount of success with it, but he still wasn't really throwing the ball downfield very much. And it kind of showed in the playoff game, I think. San Francisco kind of took the underneath stuff away, and the Dallas offense really didn't get much going. I mean, I think if you put an elite quarterback in that position, in Prescott's position in that game, with the way the San Fran offense played in the second half, they probably win the game. But the Cowboys weren't able to. It ended up being a 49ers win, and I just don't know if Dak Prescott necessarily... I think everyone has been waiting for Dak Prescott to become an elite quarterback, is what I'm trying to say. And we're now entering his 7th year in the NFL. And he was a fourth rounder out of Mississippi State. Not many people expected him to be where he is right now. And I think it's amazing, his story. But I don't think we'll ever see Dak Prescott as a truly elite quarterback in a single season. I just don't see it. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely fine. Dak Prescott is more than capable of winning a Super Bowl and leading your team potentially even to a Super Bowl. But I think he needs more around him than the elite guys do, which is what holds him from my top 10. So at number 11, I have Dak Prescott. At number 10, entering the top 10, I have Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders. Derek Carr is better than a lot of people think he is. He is. And I think he's been getting more credit recently for his actions. But, guys, this guy last season carried his team to the playoffs. And I mean carried. There was, a couple games there where Derek Carr truly won games for his team. He was legitimately the only reason they won. You look at the first game of the year against the Baltimore Ravens. You look early in the season against the Miami Dolphins. You look at on Thanksgiving against the Dallas Cowboys. You look at the last game of the season against the Los Angeles Chargers in a winner-take-all game. Derek Carr won all those games. A lot of those games coming against elite quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, who you'll see later on this list. Justin Herbert, who you'll see later on this list. Dak Prescott, who you just saw on this list. Personally, I think the difference between Dak Prescott and Derek Carr is big throws. Derek Carr makes a ton of just huge throws. He was top 3 in the NFL in big-time throws last season. He was top 5, I believe, in big-time throw percentage. He makes more big throws than Dak Prescott does. I think Derek Carr at the line of scrimmage is really underrated. I think Derek Carr augments his offensive line in ways that only guys like Tom Brady and Matt Ryan are able to right now in the league. I think Derek Carr is really accurate. I think Derek Carr is really good inside, outside the numbers. I think he is a careful gambler, I guess, in that he takes calculated risks. He doesn't take dumb throws, but he makes enough downfield throws to where he can be described as something of a risk taker. And overall, I think as a leader, he's really become underrated, and I think he's really gotten better there. And he's a great mover. He's not necessarily a great runner, but he can move outside the pocket. He can at times even extend plays. Outside of really, I think, a huge arm, he's got a good arm. I don't think he has a huge arm. And, at times he hasn't had necessarily the most elite resume, I guess. But Derek Carr, I think, especially last season, elevated his stock. And I have him. I can't not put him in the top 10 after last season. At number 9, I have the new Denver Broncos quarterback, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, I believe, will have a better year in 2022 than he did in 2021. I think a big problem for Russell Wilson last year was, honestly, I think he just kind of found it stale in Seattle. I think he found the scheme stale. I think he found just the team as a whole, the organization as a whole, stale. And I just think he fell out of love with it. I'm going to be honest, guys. I think Russell Wilson, back in Denver now, he will be rejuvenated, he will be motivated, and he will be, I think, ready for success in 2022. Now, I do think Russell Wilson's declined in areas. I don't know if his escapability and overall mobility are necessarily what they used to be. I think his mobility from about 2012 to 2015 was excellent. And then from about 16 to 20 was very good. And I think his escapability has always been excellent, but last year that declines with injury. I think his his unwillingness to take what the defense gives him at times and take some of that short stuff hurts him. But I think Russell Wilson is one of the best deep passers in the league still. Probably still has the prettiest arc on his deep passes in the league, him and Aaron Rodgers for that. And I also think he is still a very accurate quarterback. He still has a good arm. I'm not going to go great, but I think he has a good arm. And overall, Russell Wilson is just a very talented and very good quarterback. I don't think he's elite, but I think at this point, he is still very, very good. He is right on the border of elite, and you could argue me into it any day. So right now, at number 9, I have Russell Wilson. At number 8, I have the most electric quarterback in the NFL, Lamar Jackson. Lamar is still every bit of the greatest rushing quarterback ever. He is extremely elusive, but I also think he is underrated for just how powerful of a runner he is. He's over 200 pounds, and he's about just under 100 kilograms. He's fairly big, and you really have to exert a lot of energy to tackle him. He's unstoppable as a rusher. I know his rushing stats maybe weren't quite as good last season, but defenses had to worry so much about him that it just made him ridiculously tough to stop. But where I was really impressed with Lamar Jackson, especially early in the season, was his ability as a passer. I thought Lamar Jackson, when it came to passing the football, purely just passing the football, was a much improved quarterback. And there's one game in particular that stands out to me as an example of this, and that was the Indianapolis Colts game. The Ravens were down in that game. I want to say it was something like 17-0 in that game. It was a huge margin. And Lamar Jackson, with his heart and with his arm, led them back in that game and led them to a win. He did not have a very good offensive line. He did not have very good receivers. It was him and Mark Andrews just doing magic, and he was able to get it done. The Ravens were not an elite roster by any means last season. Lamar had him 8-3, and in position to get the number 1 seed before he got hurt, and they did end up losing a couple of close games down the stretch of that season. Lamar Jackson is not a running back. He has a great arm. He's accurate. I do think his mechanics regressed a little bit last season, but again, he was hurt. You got to factor that in with this guy. He was hurt last season. It wasn't like that, he was just playing horribly all the time. He was hurt towards the end of the year. So, I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a bounce back year. I think he's every bit as good of a rusher as he ever was, and I think he's only getting better as a passer. At number 7, I have Matthew Stafford, now a Super Bowl champion. Matthew Stafford, man, what can I say about him? I had him ranked 7th last year, but I'd be honest if I said I was one of his biggest believers, because I was high on him, but I had questions about him. And he answered every question I had about him last season. And I understand, he did lead the league in picks last year. I don't care about that. Brett Favre threw picks. Peyton Manning threw picks. Drew Brees threw picks. Dan Marino threw picks. It's okay. I mean, everybody throws picks. In fact, if Stafford had thrown 2 picks instead of 17, would have been a little bit more concerning, because I know Matt Stafford tries to throw the ball down the field, and I know Matt Stafford isn't a dumb quarterback. So some of that wasn't exactly his fault. He did take some risks, and look, it took some time for Matt Stafford to adjust to the Rams system, but once he did in the playoffs, wow. And his arm is top-notch in the NFL. His accuracy, top-notch in the NFL. His ability to throw into tight windows is among the best, might be the best in the league. The only area that has really declined with him, I think, is the mobility. He used to be a little bit more mobile than he is currently, but he's still, he's able to sneak it. He's able to, run for a few yard gains here and there. And he can step up into the pocket and throw downfield. He throws strikes with ease. He's one of the best pocket passers in the league. He's every bit as good as really anybody in that aspect. But what impresses me most about Matt Stafford, end of games. Clutch ability. We saw him do it a ton in Detroit, and we saw him do it certainly last season. Matthew Stafford, I think what symbolizes just how great he is the Tampa Bay Bucs game. He was dominating that game. He was the best player on the field that night. They were dominating that game for the first 3 quarters, and the Bucs started to get back in it. And look, the team around Matt Stafford was the one crumbling apart. Matt Stafford was playing great throughout. The team around him was crumbling. All of a sudden, last drive of the game, tie game. Can Matt Stafford make a play? Matt Stafford makes that downfield throw to Cooper Kupp. Sets up a field goal. Rams win. Against Tom Brady, who was the voodoo of Tom Brady. It's happening again. Matt Stafford doesn't matter. I'm gonna win it. I'm gonna throw the best throw of my career, and I'm gonna win it. He did that in his first ever win, or second ever win, against the Cleveland Browns, and he did the same thing in Tampa Bay at Tom Brady's place. He outplayed the greatest quarterback of all time in his building. That deserves some respect. A couple weeks later in the Super Bowl, played very well, I thought, in that game at the end, too. Outplayed Joe Burrow, I thought. And really, Matt Stafford, his emotional discipline in big games has really revealed itself to me. And I think he's a very good leader. So, Matthew Stafford, I have at number 7, and I would not be shocked if he were in the top 5 next year. At number 6, I have Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is extremely physically talented, and I've known this. He has an awesome arm. He has awesome arm angles. He can thread the needle. He can throw into tight windows. He's a very good deep passer. He's very good under pressure. He's very good against the blitz. Can't blitz the guy. Where Justin Herbert really improved, I thought, last year was up here in his mind. I think he has a very quick release, and not only just his release, I thought his accuracy improved. I thought he improved in the short intermediate ranges of the game. I thought the game slowed down for him, and I thought Justin Herbert was more consistent last year than he was the year before. I really did. Justin Herbert was exceptional last season, truly, I thought. And I don't think the Chargers were necessarily a great team last season. I thought they were pretty good. I didn't think they were great. And Justin Herbert almost pulled them to the playoffs with extenuating circumstances going against him. The only thing I think Justin Herbert really lacks is it's not even in his skill, because he's extremely skilled. He's, I think, extremely underrated as a runner too. He's physical, he's big, I think he's 6'5". I think Justin Herbert just doesn't take over games at times. It's kind of a little bit of a criticism I had early of Matt Stafford. I felt like Justin Herbert at times didn't take over some games the way he maybe should have to will his team. But I have no doubt that Justin Herbert did everything in his power to get the Chargers to the playoffs. But ultimately, with how good the league is at quarterback, it was hard for me to put him in the top 5 after missing the playoffs. When the guys above him, if they were to miss the playoffs, especially the top 4, it would just be unfathomable. So, Justin Herbert at number 6. I would not be surprised if I have him at number 1 after next season. That's how much I'm a fan of him. I have Justin Herbert right now at number 6. At number 5, I have Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. Wow, what a year Joe Burrow had. The only negative, really, is he threw a ton of picks, but almost all of his picks were not his fault. He had one of the lowest turnover-worthy play percentages in the NFL. He was simply unlucky. Let's be honest. He was unlucky, just like the guy just below him, Justin Herbert, was. The difference between Herbert and Burrow for me, I think Burrow's a little bit better from the pocket. I think Burrow is also just, I think he takes over games more, I guess, or is less afraid to take over games. And I also think Joe Burrow has this aura around him. It's almost a meme. And Joe Burrow appeals to both communities in the NFL currently. He appeals to the advanced stats community because he has a great, expected points added and yards per attempt and passer rating and all that. And he appeals to he got that dog in him, kind of an NFL part, because he does have that dog in him. He's a great leader. He has a great aura around him. He's a winner. And nobody could have expected the Bengals to make the Super Bowl last year, and he was the biggest reason why. He's extremely accurate. He's very smart, one of the smartest quarterbacks I've seen at such a young age. He's like a ninja with how he can kind of escape the pocket and evade pressure. He's not super fast, but he can run. He is someone that has put some more power on his throws, but it's his touch that make him such a good deep passer and really improve that area of his game. Overall, Joe Burrow is certainly one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I believe after last season, you'd be hard-pressed not to put him in your top 5. At number 4, I have the defending league MVP, back-to-back MVP, Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers has been, over the last 2 years, the best quarterback in the league. I don't think that's really debatable. He has been ridiculously efficient in terms of the passer rating and touchdown interception stats specifically. I think where he falls for me a little bit, I'll get into that later. Let's start with the good. Aaron Rodgers still has a big-time arm, one of the best in the league. Aaron Rodgers is still one of the most accurate in the league. Aaron Rodgers is still one of the best at the line of scrimmage. Aaron Rodgers is the best, I would say, post-snap along with Tom Brady in the league. Aaron Rodgers knows just about when to put the right amount of power on his deep passes, when to put the right amount of touch on his defenses or on his deep passes. And he really does that, I think, better than any other quarterback in the NFL. He doesn't really have much mobility to him anymore, which hurts him a little bit. But I think the area in which he's really fallen a little bit for me is a lot of times in these big games, like the San Francisco game last season, maybe even the Tampa Bay game, he's scared to make a throw. Like, he locks onto Davante Adams, and then he doesn't go to anybody else. It was against San Francisco. It was Davante Adams and Aaron Jones, no one else. It was, just throw it short to them. A lot of it is scheme with him now. He's not as good off schedule anymore. And again, he looks scared to make a throw in that San Francisco game. I think if you put one of the top three in that situation, they probably win that game. They aren't putting their offense in a position to where a blocked kick is going to tie the game at 10 at home. I mean, the Green Bay defense played so well in that game, and they still lost, and Aaron Rodgers deserves a lion's share of the blame for that, along with the special teams. And I think Aaron Rodgers, his leadership is a bit questionable as well. So when it comes to winning a championship, I'm not sure if Aaron Rodgers is necessarily the guy that you want at one. But in terms of overall skill, he might be the best in the league. And in terms of production over the last 2 years, he's been the best in the league. So make of that what you will. Any way you slice it, I think, though, Aaron Rodgers is an unbelievable quarterback. At number 3, I have Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are going to probably have Patrick Mahomes at 1, and that's okay. But I think the thing with Patrick Mahomes and what really knocked him down for me last season was his ability in a clean pocket. He really struggled just overall from the pocket relative to the guys that I have in the top 2. And I think defenses realized if you make this guy think and you make this guy, you strip away some of the playmaking things and you have to try and make him more of a pocket passer, he's beatable. He's vulnerable. And we saw a lot of first in a negative connotation for Mahomes last season. First time losing to, I think, a team, or second time losing to a team twice in a season. He couldn't beat the Bengals last year. There are a couple first-time home losses, double-digit losses, whatever the case may be. Patrick Mahomes had a lot of firsts in negative ways last season, and it was not good, just to say the least. Now, I think Patrick Mahomes still maybe the best playmaker at the quarterback position in the league. Maybe the best arm in the league. I think probably just behind Josh Allen in that. I think he's very accurate. And I do think he got better at the end of the season at taking the intermediate and short stuff and overall just being a more disciplined, smarter quarterback. And I think he'll be better at that this year. But because of the struggles he underwent last season, I can't put him at number 1 because it's simple nuances of the quarterback position. I just don't believe he does quite well enough to be the best quarterback in the NFL. It's a little bit of what I said last season, but I think that was amplified more and proven more in this past season to where I drop him from 2 to 3. At number 2, I have Josh Allen. I have Josh Allen above Patrick Mahomes. I think he's been the more impressive player over the last 2 seasons. I think Josh Allen's production over the last 2 seasons has been equal to Patrick Mahomes with worse support around him. That's just how I feel. I think Josh Allen is better from the pocket than Patrick Mahomes. I think Josh Allen is more accurate than Patrick Mahomes. And I think Josh Allen, honestly, is probably smarter. He goes through his progressions and reads better than Patrick Mahomes does. I truly believe that. Now, I think Josh Allen does lack a little still in situational awareness, but I think that it got better last season. I think Josh Allen, as a dual threat, is amazing. I think he's one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Josh Allen has the best arm in football. I think Josh Allen is ridiculous when it comes to throwing arm angles, off platform, the whole spiel of physical traits. He has all of them. He can make every throw in the book. Josh Allen is an alien. He is ridiculous. He is the biggest one-man show in the NFL. And if you gave me a terrible team and I was drafting a quarterback, I would take Josh Allen. But because of the lack of situational awareness, and because I just think number one has such an edge when it comes to leadership and play in the clutch. And it's not even that Josh Allen isn't clutch, because he is. He was playing at an insane level in last year's playoffs. But I think the gap in just the leadership aspect of it and the mental aspect of it puts Josh Allen just as a very close second for me. Still, though, if you wanted to argue Josh Allen was the best quarterback in the league, would not fight you on it. So, at number 2, I have Josh Allen. And at number 1, I have the greatest quarterback ever, Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady last season proved a lot about his ability to really carry a team. Because honestly, he carried that Tampa Bay team last season. Tampa Bay was ravaged by injuries and poor coaching, and here still they are, 13 wins and in the divisional rounds, a play away from potentially getting to an NFC championship in a game that they were hopeless in. And it's really the ability that Tom Brady still has to bring his team back in a game. You never feel like you're out of a game with Tom Brady. Whereas with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I feel like at times he just can't bring his team back. Tom Brady, I have no doubt, can do that. Has his clutch ability always been like that? Yes, it still remains that way. He is the smartest quarterback in the league mentally. He has reached a level that only the guy I'm wearing, currently Peyton Manning, has also reached. He has this ability to augment his offensive line in a way only Peyton and Drew Brees have also been able to. Is his arm better now? I think his arm got a little better last season. He had the most rushing yards he had in a season since 2011, most rushing yards in a decade last season. Tom Brady was still ridiculously good last season. I thought he should have won MVP. That's how good I thought he was. He led the league in yards, led the league in touchdowns. And I think when you give Tom Brady an elite team, he's the best quarterback in the league. And because of how good Tom Brady was, because of his leadership, because of his clutch ability, because of everything he brings to a team, I think Tom Brady today, if I'm trying to win a championship, is the guy I'd take. Still, even at his advanced age, over everybody else.